I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. I want to read for you some names right now and some locations that Special Counsel Jack Smith is very focused on in his criminal investigation of Donald Trump. And this is an area where Special Counsel Jack Smith has a clear slam dunk path, in my opinion, for prosecuting Donald Trump, and it doesn't get talked about a lot. And let's focus on what the media is really not covering right now. You ready for these names? Jim Penrose, Doug Logan, Charles Bundrum, Coffee County, Georgia, Antrim County, Michigan, Allied Security Operations Group. Okay, let's connect the dots with all of those individuals and those places and why Special Counsel Jack Smith is very interested in all of them. So you may recall one of the big plans that Donald Trump had with Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani and Mike Flynn was to seize voting machines after the 2020 election. In fact, they went to the top officials at the Department of Homeland Security, the acting secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, Chad Wolf's top deputy, Ken Cuccinelli, and ultimately Cuccinelli and Wolf said, "We'd like to help you, but we really can't. It's not really our jurisdiction. We can't seize voting machines." And you may recall there was that December 18th meeting between some of Trump's lawyers who called themselves Team Normal, and they went against who they called Team Crazy, the Giulianis and the Flynns and the Pillow Guy, Lindell, and the Sidney Powells, and everybody was screaming at each other. You remember that from the January 6th committee hearings, right? And it was over whether they could seize voting machines and all of that. Well, let me tell you what Team Crazy did. Although they couldn't actually seize voting machines, they did the next best thing, which was to have operatives go into local election offices and basically download private election data, steal private election data that did not belong to them. This happened in Coffee County, which was a red area in Georgia where at least two operatives went in there. I think they had a mole on the inside. They ended up downloading all of this election data, which was then uploaded through an encrypted system to Giuliani and Sidney Powell, and ultimately all the way up to Donald Trump and Trump's close legal advisors. So they did that. You know what date they did that on in Coffee County, Georgia? January 7th, 2021. So one day after the insurrection. In fact, before that, though, they did the same thing in Antrim County, Michigan. They had someone go into Antrim County. They got the election data. They loaded it up on an encrypted system and went all the way up to, Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and ostensibly, Donald Trump. They were all doing the work on Trump's behalf. So let's be clear what this is. It's not like they just got election data. They got stolen election data. So why would they want to steal this election data from places like Coffee County and Antrim County? Why do they want to seize the voting machines? Why, for example, when you had the Cyber Ninjas group do the kind of the fake audit that they did in Arizona when they were hired by the MAGA Republicans, why did they try to take the voting machines into a forest in Montana and basically try to hide the machines in the county? Well, what were they trying to do? Well, they ultimately wanted to weaponize the data and manipulate the data and change the data. And what were they going to do with it? They were then going to prepare their phony reports and file their lawsuits claiming that they had the real data, right? Everything that they do is projection. So when they accused Dominion and Smartmatic, when they defamed them and said that they were changing votes from Trump to Biden through the algorithms. They were just telling on themselves. That's what the MAGA Republicans wanted to do when they seized the voting machines. That's what they wanted to do when they sent operatives in there after they couldn't seize the voting machines to get their hands on the data. When Donald Trump was saying to Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, "Find me the votes," that was actually an order that Donald Trump was giving to others like Giuliani and Sidney Powell, down to the lower level operatives. They were trying to find votes. They were trying to harvest votes. And how are they trying to do that? By seizing voting data, or at first trying to seize voting machines, and then ultimately manipulate that data and say, voila. They were going to try to change the votes in these areas where there were small margins on a county by county basis, or look at one county and then try to extrapolate something bigger with incorrect data that they've weaponized to try to claim that Donald Trump won when he did not win. And so that first took place in Antrim in December of 2020. That then took place in Coffee County in Georgia on January 7th, 2021. And CNN got text messages. CNN got text messages between people like Penrose, Doug Logan, the CEO of Cyber Ninjas. Penrose used to work at the NSA. He was, deep into this. Charles Bundren, deep into this. These were people working very closely with the Trump campaign to try to prepare reports from this data that ultimately was breached. Here, let me just show you just from the CNN report. According to CNN, Penrose said, "Here's the plan. Let's keep this close hold. We only have until Saturday to decide if we're going to use this report to try to decertify the Senate runoff election." Talk about the Senate runoff election in Georgia. "Or if we hold it for a bigger moment. If you can draft a report for review on Friday morning with Charles Bundren, that would be best." Remember, I also mentioned the name Allied Security Operations Group. Who's Allied Security Operations Group? They were the ones involved they're a small Texas-based company. They were the ones apparently who were involved in getting the data from Antrim County in Michigan. Allied Security Operations Groups was then also hired at first by the Arizona Republicans. They then decided, I guess, that Allied Security Operations Group wasn't radical enough for them, so they then brought in the Cyber Ninjas. But Allied Security Operations Group was brought in first. I mean, and by the way, MAGA Republicans in all various different state legislatures tried to bring in groups like Allied Security Operations Group and Cyber Ninjas. I mean, you got Doug Mastriano, state senator in Pennsylvania, wanted to try to, I think, bring in this Allied Security Operations Group. So this was a coordinated effort. So why Jim Penrose, Doug Logan, Antrim, Coffee? Why is all of this significant? Allied Security Operations Group. Because let's remember what Special Counsel Jack Smith is focused on, just to break it down, right? So there are at least 2 grand juries that we know in Washington, D.C. right now involved in criminal investigations of Donald Trump. One relates to Trump's theft of thousands of government records and Trump's obstruction of justice. That's one grand jury in D.C. federal court. The other D.C. federal court grand jury that Special Counsel Jack Smith and his team are presenting evidence to is Donald Trump's election interference. And there's multi-prongs to Trump's election interference, right? There's what took place on the day of January 6th itself, an actual violent insurrection. So that's kind of one prong of it, where criminal charges potentially can be brought. There's the fake elector scheme, right? That's where Donald Trump encouraged and caused these MAGA Republicans to submit their own names on state certified documents claiming Trump won states that Biden won, and they sent these fake certifications with fake electors to be certified by Pence on January 6th, when Pence said he wasn't going along with that plan. That's when Trump resorted to the violent insurrection. So the fake elector scheme. There's three. There's Donald Trump's threats to state and local election officials. Find me the votes or else, and other threats that he made to state and local election officials. There's campaign finance violations, right? There's Donald Trump using his political action arms to grift, to make millions of dollars and then use that money to obstruct justice. So there's a campaign finance violation, wire fraud aspect of this. And what we're talking about here, though, this is the one that's not really getting the headlines, but it's an area where Jack Smith can establish clear liability against Donald Trump as well, which actually involves stealing, the theft of election data. So the theft of election data in Coffee County, Georgia, the theft of election data in Antrim County, Michigan, with the goal of manipulating that data in court proceedings and then lying to the court about this data and saying it says something that it didn't say, right? That's when you piece this together also why the request to the subpoenas for Chad Wolf, the former acting secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and Ken Cuccinelli, the former top deputy to Chad Wolf at the Department of Homeland Security, is also so important because even though they turned down the request to seize voting machines, you know, well, what's so important about that? By the way, if they could have, they would have, I think, seized voting machines. But the timeline is what's so important. After they couldn't seize voting machines, that's when Giuliani and Powell and Trump's team was like, you know what, we don't really even need to seize it. Let's just send people in to basically steal private election data of citizens in various states. And then let's say that now that we've got this data, that it says things that it really doesn't say. So that's that process. And ultimately, I think when you're dealing with theft of election data, these declarations under penalty of perjury, that provides false information about election fraud that didn't exist, I think that's where Special Counsel Jack Smith is going with this. And that's why all of these names are very important, and why, you know, even though this is not really being reported by large media networks, stay very focused on this over the coming months, because this is going to start to become a very key point of ultimately the criminal charges that I believe Special Counsel Jack Smith's going to bring against Donald Trump. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1.5 million subscribers thanks to your incredible support. It's free to subscribe to this YouTube channel, so hit subscribe right now. Also, wherever you get your audio podcast, just whatever you use, Spotify or Apple or Google, Anchor, whatever you use, just search MeidasTouch Podcast, subscribe. It's free. And if you want to help grow this platform by becoming a member of our Patreon, that's really helpful if you can do that. So go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch and join the Patreon. So thank you so much for watching. Now, if you can, please hit subscribe on this YouTube channel. It's free to subscribe. Help us get to 1.5 million subscribers. Have a great day.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.